There's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. A little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP. Hey, Gumpers.
Taken by surprise by Mrs. M in the morning. Who doesn't like? It is 8:32 now. The time the Good Morning Portugal show starts. So, hola, bom dia, alegria. Tudo bem? Como estás, Mrs. M? So lovely to see you here at the beginning of the show. How are you this morning?
Yes,
I'm in the living room.
I know. Thanks for pointing that out.
It's
just a few books. It's just a few books and some Halloween art.
Learning in progress. Okay.
Yeah.
5 duck rating this morning.
That's great.
I'm meeting that with a 5
aubergine.
Aubergines. Aubergines, aren't they? Because or eggplant if you're from Porto. But if you would like
berinjela, if you're from Portugal.
Sim, berinjela, Jorges. If you would like to rate the day with an emoji of your choice, keep it clean, please. Although that's where I went immediately. Apparently, I don't know if this is one of those barrel scraping, woke bashing news items, but the aubergine, eggplant, berinjela emoji may be banned by social media.
Why?
Because it's offensive to people, apparently.
Why?
I'm not sure, and I don't even know if I want to go.
Let us know why you think the aubergine might be offensive to people. Yes. I mean, it kind of looks like it's going like this.
It hurt my feelings.
You know, in a Zé Pavino, by the way, but kind of way.
Yes.
I just thought you chose it because it matched your lovely thundery backdrop.
No, I didn't. Which is flashing like thunder at my end. I don't know if that's happening for you there, but
I can't see because I've got the shutters closed.
No, actually, it's my screen flashing. It's like a lightning effect. It's quite amazing. Okay, we got Mrs. M with us this one, as you can see. Any questions for Mrs. M on our new "What He Doesn't Tell You" feature? Do you know
what? Nobody wants to know what you don't tell them. So I'll just chip in whenever and say I call bullshit on that or something. You know,
it's only for that sort of language. Anyway, okay. Thank you for being here this morning. But let's see who's here with us this morning on the Good Morning Portugal show. Bon dia, Carl and Gumpers from a dry, misty Belfast, 9 degrees overnight. Fantastic. Well, is it? I mean, 9 degrees, not too bad. Could be worse. It could be as wet as it is here. The dogs haven't been out because it's been peeing down. Gatos e cães here on the Silver Coast this morning, and thunder and lightning, very, very frightening indeed, especially for the Fado face here. He's not too happy about it, is he?
Yeah, he's a little bit concerned by it, isn't he?
He is, bless him. He's just standing. You know how some big dogs, especially sort of the greyhounds and the whippets and the lurchers of the world, just stand there all kind of sad. He's been doing that this morning, so we've been doing our best to reassure him that everything is okay, despite the sky and world looking like it does behind me on this photo this morning. Good morning, Diego, from a wet and rainy Lisbon. When were these guys here? From just after 7:30. What's your secret for 5 ducks in the morning, T-Duck? Coach Turner, bon dia, Gumpers. I know this morning that Portugal has just closed its last coal-fired power station and is aiming to be fully renewable before 2040. Well, I imagine that'll be turned into apartments before the end of next month, won't it? And you can be a golden visa investment opportunity. Live in an old coal-powered power plant thing. Okay, Ian Turner. In other news, the Portugal under-21 team has arrived here at the training camp. There he is in that athletic hotel. And look, we have a tour.
Wow, that looks exciting.
But is it? Because I'm thinking, is that the Portuguese team or is that Algarve FC? I don't know. It's FCEA, isn't it? So can anyone identify that tour bus for us? I'm not seeing that is the Portuguese national team personally, Coach Turner. But thank you very much for sending. It's the coach sending a picture of the coach. He did. He really did. Okay, and the Sudoku this morning, just to keep your mind active learning Portuguese. Why do Sudoku and Wordle when you can actually apply your mind to the mental athleticism that's required to learn the Portuguese language? This is a very nice one, I think, this morning, Mrs. M. It's also on our website if you want to go look it up there. What do you make of this so far? Can I put you on the spot like this, or would you rather I didn't, frankly?
I'd rather you didn't.
Okay.
I need to get old Deeple out.
That was Deeple, not Deagle.
No,
Deagle's in Belfast. What? No, Deeple, not Deagle.
Deepl, DEEPL.com, which I actually think is much better than Google Translate.
Yes. All right. Well, you don't have to do it right now. I think this is a good idea. That
what is it exactly? Is it a ticket or?
Well, I'll tell you what. Before I take it off the screen, the thing that appealed to me was Portugal so ill.
That's what I was just looking at
in the middle, and
like
I
it's
saw
you.
That. Well, it was on our olive oil. I am Portugal, right? I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Straight away.
Portugal is me, or yes. I am Portugal.
Yes, and I saw it. I tried to take a photograph of our olive oil label. I had a Vidigueira, nice extra virgin olive oil from Vidigueira, and it had that logo on it. And I thought, what's that about? And the photograph didn't come out very well, so I researched it online, and it's part of this whole initiative, which has these fabulous phrases. Okay, seria de Portugal sem ti, and Portugal precisa de todos, which I will leave. It's on our website. If you go to the Gumper tab on the website and you want to look at that.
This is nice.
Yeah. Okay, that's today's Lusodoku, everybody, and we will have a jingle one day for that. Keep your mind active with Lusodoku. Learn a language rather than waste your time with a strange mathematics or anagrammatical puzzle. Learn something real and practical. Well, I suppose that applies to people who are here and living in Portugal. And if you are this morning feeling like this, you have a big abraço from us. When you're
that is nice. That's let's choose products with this seal. Oh dear, what's happened there? What happened to that poor baby?
It's not a baby, it's a grown-up.
Oh,
when you're over 50 and they say put a Band-Aid on where it hurts. If you're feeling like that this morning, have a big hug. It's not funny, Mr.
Well, I'm not over 50 yet, but yeah, I do understand what's going on there.
You out, youngster. Okay, well, thank you, Coach, for your coach picture. Your God Squad tip of the day, then. We've played paddle tennis for the first time here. What a great workout. Good fun and relatively easy to learn compared with traditional tennis. Check it out. So we've got paddle and pickle that people are learning and picking up here in Portugal.
What's pickle?
Pickleball.
Did I miss that? Pickleball. What is that?
Pickleball might be a bit like a squash game in a glass like an aquarium for human beings, which at the moment with the rain that we've had will probably be like an aquarium for human beings. But yeah, pickleball. Also, try that out. Look it up.
I'm looking it up right now.
Honestly, though, Mrs. M, I'm talking about paddleball and pickleball, and you're pretending to be interested. Do you really think you'll be going to play paddleball or pickleball at any time soon?
Absolutely not, ever.
Exactly.
Or going for a jog.
Maybe
a bit of light stretching would be nice. Or go for a nice walk or some nice lovemaking, but no. A bit of gardening. Chasing a kid if I need to, but
yes, exactly. So what was it about paddle that interested you? Just your sense of curiosity. You don't want to do it yourself.
I was just wondering what a pickleball might look like, or what made it pickly. It just brought to mind that those apps on I don't even know what they're called, but where you can replace your face with a pickle or something like that on Messenger. Was it? Our kid, our youngest, got very very amused by turning himself into a pickle, and so I had all these kind of visuals going up about pickleball.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I just wanted, to have a more accurate visual, and in fact, a Google search doesn't really bring up anything that looks. Okay, so it looks like tennis, but just with.
She's doing live research for you, people. This is an amazing thing.
It looks like tennis. It's played on a court that looks like a tennis court.
Easier tennis, that's right. Good fun and relatively easy.
But they're doing it with cat toys. What? These balls look like cat toys. It looks like something you find under your sofa about 5 minutes after you've given a new cat toy to your cat, covered in fluff.
Okay.
Or it looks like something you might put in the washing machine.
I think you've put everybody. Oh, God.
Sorry, Coach Turner.
The day is to get everyone interested in paddle tennis, and you've done your very best there in just 30 seconds of research to put everybody.
John and Pam are asking: Is similar to prickle-ball. That's a whole new one.
That's pickleball, not prickleball. I think. Forgive me. Well, maybe it's called prickle as well around the world. Pickleball, prickleball. Oh,
That might be like, with a really like hard ball with lots of things to hurt you with.
What, a bit like
Who knows?
murder ball at school. That was always fun, wasn't it? But with a prickly ball instead of a smooth ball. Okay, didn't have smooth balls in my day. Okay, right. So who else is here? Can you choose some comments and chat and respond, because I'm still trying to do the ticker tape to announce the
No, John is saying it was pickleball.
Oh, thank goodness for that. Although other people may now have been inspired. You're welcome to that new idea of prickle.
Here's something I'd like to address. Thank you, Paul, for bringing
What
that
a
up.
stirrer.
Where is the new backdrop you were promised? See, this is the thing. I actually want a nice studio to work in, and I'd like it to just be really nice and plain with lots of beautiful, great big plants. So it feels like I'm in a jungle conservatory or something.
Yes. But no. Thank you, Paul, for ruining my day like that. That's what mates are for, isn't it?
Well, I could put it together, but I might need some help getting all the resources in.
Yes, indeed.
I'd need you to look after the kids while I do it, because I think it would go a bit wonky.
No, I'll do it. It's fine. I'll do it. Okay. Paul, have you seen this bus? Is that Algarve FC or is it the under-21s team? I know that's a strange request and question of you, but at least it changes the subject. Okay. We got
an interesting one. Sorry, you asked me to have a little.
Yeah, go on, please.
Go through.
Yeah.
Gary Austin saying, what do we think about the new proposed gas pipeline that extends into Portugal? Mixed feelings about the reliance on fossil fuel and environmental impact, but being constructed to also pump hydrogen.
I don't know. We'll get the Minister of Energy on the show to question them about it, I think. But in the meantime, we'll make do with you, Gary. Proposed gas, you know what immediately came to my mind? It was a feijoada system, that people eating beans and actually doing their bit for the system, including Gary Austin and Brother Terence with that. Between them, they could generate quite a lot of gas, I think, especially after a night on the real ale, as well as the feijoada combo, and power half of Portugal, at least for half an hour. So that's what I think about it, which is immature and silly, and it's not taking your question at all seriously. So I'm thinking, and with a more serious news head on, this would, I suppose, diminish our reliance on other gas suppliers around the world, which seem to be in the news at the moment. So I don't know. It sounds like a good thing. We need to know more, Gary. Have you got a link to a news article? What do you think about it, Mrs. M?
Well, like you, I haven't really. I try not to follow mainstream news or announcements and things like that. Mainly because I feel less engaged in the real world, to be honest. I'm just telling it like it is. Yes. I do listen to a lot of different things, but I actually think there is no great big solution whilst we're all looking at it from a big countrywide, worldwide solution.
Yes.
Because I think there's a lot of money involved in that, and a lot of special grants and things taken out of EU money to do this research and that research, which I doubt is ever actually unbiased, just because of all the players in the game. I would really like to see that just people start to take control of their own power. But I'm a hideously optimistic. I don't know. I'm a bit of a libertarian at heart, to be honest. I think like from my own perspective, and it's just my opinion, and I'm sure most people will actually disagree. I would like to. I would like. Yeah, I am thinking in terms of how we can set up our own things. And help each other set up our own things, and also change the way we live. I don't think the way we're living has been largely encouraged because of cultural norms and the cultural norms that we're all living by have all come about by vested interest 100 years down the way. And I'm not entirely sure that the way modern Western living is prescribed is necessarily the right thing. So slowly and surely, we're kind of unpicking it and just trying to find our own context. So yeah, I don't really have a big comment about the energy as such, because my focus is on how are we all going to live in and find our own context in this world.
Yes,
That's where
you.
my attention is really.
See what you did there, Gary?
What did I do?
It set you
What
off.
did he do?
No, but I think it's as though we've learned nothing from having one big pipeline into Europe or the country, isn't it? That's supposed to be the problem of the moment, is that dependency on one great big, or two, I think it is, isn't it? Two pipelines makes you quite vulnerable. So I know, let's make a different one. But I agree with you completely, Mrs. M. Local.
I mean, one of the things, I think we need to all be very practical as well. I mean, I know there's a lot of hard lobbying for
who doesn't like?
We must do this to save the environment. Yes. And I also have seen quite a few documentaries about countries that went straight ahead with the full recommendations, and they were all countries that didn't necessarily have it all together anyway. Like there's I'll have to find out which countries they were, but the countries that went completely organic in their growing, that completely came off gas and electricity, to use wind and solar and homemade compost and stuff, their economies have collapsed. They're living in poverty. They have no energy, and the people that are ruling them have all the energy, funnily enough. And so I think the recommendations that have been kind of, you must do this by this time and blah, 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 blah. And it's all about stopping things, but without the infrastructure, the new infrastructure coming in, which is based on something a bit more sensible and a bit more local, it's not being done. A lot of these countries that were test beds have been left in ruins. So, I'm a little bit, I understand that it all looks like we need to be moving forwards and doing things for, the ecology based on what we've been told. But the first results through the door aren't exactly brilliant.
It often turns out
there are
that
food shortages as well. Like people
Yeah.
haven't been able to eat properly or wash, or there's a massive knock-on effect. If all the electricity or gas goes down, all power goes down, then if you go to hospital, you might be somebody who has like no treatment. How are medications going to be shipped in? So I think I'm very wary of any kind of dictate that says you have to stop this by this time.
Okay.
Or else. I agree there should be deadlines, but I think there should be new things coming in up, alongside.
Well, that's what you started this morning, Gary, and that's interesting. Thank you, Mrs. M, for that.
But that's just my sort of like hippie homespun.
There's nothing wrong with a bit of hippie homespun. Me and our kid produce a lot of hot air, so that could be quite. And look, this is, I think, Jean, possibly Sharon, wasn't in favour of new pipelines until the Ukraine war. So for stability, perhaps, but not a long-term solution. Thank you for that contribution.
Maybe as interim things, I see the point there.
You point to the problem of centralisation, don't you? If you only have a few pipes, you have a lot of people's lives premised on a few pipes, and that hence the need for a bit of localization and local power plants, biodigesters, solar, and small-scale community-owned power production. Why not?
Yeah. When I was living in Indonesia, I remember I had a regular singing appointment. Actually, I used to go and sing with a load of beautiful people, shiny, happy people, and I used to go on my moped, and as I approached where they lived, I'd have to pay a little fee to use their roads, because they'd all, as a little collective community, the Indonesians there had repaired their roads and made them really, really good. They were amazing roads, and they just charged for people. So like they had started to take their own locality into their own hands.
Oh, I see.
And they were able to keep it really nice.
Local livelihood and infrastructure all in one there.
Yeah, not saying that that's the way forward, but when people have nothing, they start to come together and they start taking local action. Once they stop
maybe
fighting.
they will be happy about it then. Sri Lanka.
Yes, that's it. Sri Lanka.
They went
Thanks,
the
Bob.
route that is being forced on Dutch farms now, and all
Mm.
went bust. And then they went and stormed the palace. Those
Yeah.
pictures were amazing, weren't they? The Sri Lankans lounging by the pool. They stormed the palace to show their discontent. And then I think, a couple of days into it, it's like, well, what do we do now? We've had a swim in the presidential pool. We've
Yeah.
got to organize ourselves now. It's important to bear in mind that the pipeline isn't to supply Portugal, rather it's to help supply the rest of Europe with alternative sources of fuel. Portugal doing its bit for the rest of Europe then. And the other negative is the security factor, as such a large pipeline would be vulnerable to attacks from malicious entities.
Well, that's a really great point, Gary. Because wherever, and Carl was saying it a minute ago, whenever everything, all of our well-being and livelihood and stuff is reliant on one source or one major thing, it makes us all really vulnerable.
Like
if we were
WhatsApp.
all to have local solutions, things would be a bit smoother.
Yep. Oh, there you go. There's a case in point. WhatsApp is having outages today. When everyone's on one system and it goes down, you're pretty screwed, aren't you? But
well, if and when the
option
internet
here.
goes down, that's all of us screwed, isn't it?
I've
For a
got a
bit.
question. We have the question, don't you? Any questions for Mrs. M? Yeah. How do you stay so cheerful? Here's my question this morning. Okay, well, this is what we've got at 9 o'clock, everybody. Bill and Marcus's great big hospital adventure, and they'll be with us at 9 o'clock. Looking forward to talking to them, as I know a lot of people are. That was quite an event in their lives here in Portugal, and
I really want to hear
all about it. So let's squeeze a few more comments and questions, and profundities as well, because we have a few of those this morning, of course, as well as a God Squad tip of the day. Deep thought then, let's start with one of those. The secret of success is to do the common thing uncommonly well. John D. Rockefeller. Very good. And yes, what is the secret of success? Do the common thing uncommonly well. There's a tip for any would-be entrepreneurs. Not too late to start. You oldie expats, you can still start a business here in Portugal, being uncommonly brilliant, doing something common. John D. Rockefeller, of course, was an American financier, philanthropist, and the only son of Standard Oil co-founder John D. Rockefeller. Portuguese saying of the day. This is up on the website. I put these up on the homepage now. It's a funny one this morning, Mrs. M. We need your help with this. Ainda que vistas a morna de seda, morna se queda. Even if you see the silk Mona, the Mona falls. And it translates roughly as to those who are given to virtue, the boast of titles is wholly alien and distasteful. Does that make any sense to you? You can say no.
I think we need a native to explain that to us.
Okay, if you're a native,
it sounds like there's a little bit of context extra context that we need, like when you might use it. To me, like as I look at that, it's almost saying, that when you're bragging, it's not very nice, or when you're bragging about your morality, you seem distasteful or something. But
yes, and there's
I've
a bit
no idea.
Purse,
Let us know if you know.
There's silk purse action as well going on in and around that too. James is in as well this morning. Bom dia, Gumpers. Feliz terça a todos. And those, I think those dad jokes, we'll try them on Marcus and Bill as a palate cleanser towards the end of our discussion with them.
Yeah.
And a new feature from T-Duck. Who knew? So maybe, can you and I just record that after 3? 1, 2, 3. Who knew? Should we do it together this time?
What?
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Who
knew? Oh, okay.
You did it on 4.
Okay. 1, 2.
Who knew?
All right, we'll
oh
try
my
that
God, that's awful.
And we'd still
That's definitely not a feature.
That's terrible.
8 of the 10 largest statues in the world are of Buddhas.
Yeah, that's not a dad joke. I thought it was a dad joke that he sent me earlier this morning. I'm thinking to myself, is it to do with the Buddhist Hoover with no attachments and all this sort of thing? And it's actually a who knew factoid. It's not even a dad joke. So 8 of the 10 largest statues in the world of Buddhas. And when you go to the Far East, you said you went to Indonesia. Did you? I mean, it's a Hindu country mainly, isn't it? But in Thailand, where I've been, and Malaysia, the Buddhas are extraordinary. They're big, and you can see some big Buddhas. Who doesn't like a big Buddha? You can see big Buddhas in Buddha land as well, can't you? In Portugal, strangely enough, some great big Buddhas there. Tudo vai bem from T-Duck there. Thank you for that new who knew feature. We'll have some of that. Cue this from James then. We must not, in trying to think about how we can make a big difference, ignore the small daily differences we can make, which over time add up to big differences that we often cannot foresee, like tidying up the living room or doing the dishes late at night. We were talking about this, weren't we? How we live differently to our parents. Your mum and dad always make sure the washing up's done, don't they? Almost before they've had
most people are going to be like horrified listening. I mean, the way I say it, I get the kids to bed, Carl does the washing up.
Yeah.
Unless I say, love, tonight I'll do it.
I do. I do the cooking as well. I even have to eat my own dinner. I do so much, don't I? Okay, Yogi Berra quote of the day. Then I'm going to move on there. But what things do you do or not do like your parents did? I just thought that was an interesting thing this morning. Yogi Berra quote of the day, and thank you for that Marion Wright Edelman quote. Not heard of Marion Wright Edelman. Yogi Berra, no, I don't go to that restaurant anymore. Nobody goes there. It's too crowded. Yogi Berra is absolutely brilliant. I think we need to collect these together somewhere, somehow, don't we? Thank you very much for the Yogi Berra quote of the day, James. Excellent stuff.
Like my mum and dad, if there was a thunderstorm coming on, we would run around the house and unplug everything.
So quaint.
And then we would wait until a good hour had passed before we plugged it all back in again. But that might have been my parents just wanting to save electricity.
And yes, and your dad, a bit like saying that the ice cream van has run out of ice cream if it's playing the music, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was thinking to myself, I could have been hoist on my petard, my technological petard this morning, because I said, nah, that's just a superstitious old nonsense, unplugging everything. And I thought to myself, what if there's a massive crack of lightning and it fuses the studio? And then your mum and dad will have been vindicated in their behavior from the 1970s. I wonder, I think surge protection is possibly a little bit better these days. Okay, right, says James, who can help me get off this California driver license exchange hamster wheel? The pain is real. I'm sorry to laugh, but the way you put it there, the California driver license exchange hamster wheel, person, agency, whatever, sheesh.
Ours was quite straightforward, wasn't it, when we handed in our old...
in the old days, we were walked past a queue of Portuguese people, though. That was uncomfortable.
Yeah, that was really uncomfortable.
You seemed to get preferential treatment on account of you being pregnant or being surrounded by children, like that Beatles song. But we did it. We got biometrically enhanced, and it was all done and dusted fairly quickly. But that's not helping James, is it? Saying that, haha, caught me in a bad moment, Carl. What's the emoji for the most frustrated I've ever been with an IMT bureaucracy? I don't know, that red-faced one, right? Followed by being so angry you vomit emoji or something like that, James. Come on, get it out. Share. A problem shared is a problem halved. And the Portuguese need for unnecessarily, he's going for it, unnecessarily complicated and copious amounts of documentation for everything. Do you feel better, James? I told you I was having a moment. Come on, buddy. You can tell us. He did. He just told us, didn't he? Better out than in. Which is one of those phrases you think is not true, right, Mrs. M? Good morning.
What was that? I missed that.
Better out than in. You were sharing phrases, weren't you, that didn't really make much.
Yes. Yeah, I was. No, in response to James, I feel it. I really feel what you're feeling, because I was speaking to somebody yesterday who's had an invitation to a SEF appointment, and there's she's been told to choose where she does it, and there's a drop down menu with nothing in, and Porto is the only place that she can go for it. And I remember some of these sort of really strong emotions. I've been interviewing people about migration. I was interviewing a really lovely couple who some of you may know, but I'm not going to mention names at the minute. Because they're not here at the moment. I think it's a bit rude. Or if they are, they're very quiet. They're not in the chat room.
Stop us guessing. That needn't stop us. Charles and Camilla.
But anyway, they were saying that they recognize that the people in those positions are just trapped in a bad situation. I mean, I've always gone in there, who would do that job? Because, they must know they're frustrating people. And so I forget to have compassion. And these people I was speaking to just said, look, we've worked in an industry where we had to do a frontline job and we didn't have everything to back us up. Like, we didn't have the right systems. We had the wrong rules, or there were lots of things in place that stopped them from doing their job by the organization that they were working for. And from that perspective, they've just kind of released all that anxiety and just thought it will happen when it happens. And I have to say, they are very, very calm about all of those ups and downs. But it's just because they did that reframe and remembered that they've been in those situations. And then I sat back and thought, about the time I worked for British Gas and people were complaining about having dodgy boilers and they weren't sending out any mechanics and stuff. And I was just trying to field all these little old ladies with cancer and no heat. I mean, it tugged on my heartstrings so much I had to leave the job because I would have gone and got myself, fully trained as a gas engineer and gone and done it myself. But I think these are systems that are falling down. Or are trying to be built so quickly that they've not got anything to back them up.
Okay,
I don't suppose that helps, but it's just something that came out, from people who've been, really waiting for all their stuff to come through, and they've not got stressed about it. And I was just so curious as to how they managed to not get stressed out by it.
I don't think it's Charles and Camilla, but we will find out.
It's definitely not Charles and Camilla.
It is 2 minutes after 9. This is so rude, keeping our guests waiting. But this is a very good segue into them being here with systems breaking down and bureaucracy and so on. It's quite a nice setup. It's almost you did that on purpose there, Mrs. Let's bring him on. Marcus and Belle from Central Portugal, live this morning. How are you, gentlemen?
Bom dia.
Bom dia.
Bom dia.
Tudo
How
bem?
are you?
Muito obrigado. Muito bem contigo.
How are you?
Bang, 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 bang. We're well.
I like to bang, bang, bang in the morning.
Who doesn't like a bang, bang, bang in the morning?
Great.
That's part of the show, Carl, is the morning joke. That's it.
It's so good to see you, looking just like your pictures here, and the big setup for the big adventure, Bill and Marcus's hospital adventure. Before we go there, you're the other way around in the picture there.
Yeah,
but, there might be some more gray hair too. I'm not sure, but
yes, fair enough. And you're going to explain about why this morning, and we're going to have a leisurely look at the Portuguese health system and how to engage with it. Well, not that you had much choice. It was an emergency. You needed to engage with it. But before we go there and find out about that and have people ask questions about that situation, because it's for us, we had a friend in an emergency last week, and she's been hospitalized and had an operation. It's very sobering when that happens, isn't it? And we'll spend a lot of time talking about how we can be properly prepared for that and what your experience was like. But before we go there, we'd like to get to know a bit more about you and your lovely place in Central Portugal and why you came here. So please, will you tell us about yourselves and how you got to be here in Portugal, first of all?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us on the show. So we, long story short, we went to Barcelona, Spain on vacation with some friends. And this was in 2018. And it was the first time I'd ever been to Europe. Marcus had been in the service, so he'd been to Europe and Germany. And
many years ago.
So it was very eye-opening for me. And after, I think it was 12 days in Barcelona, we just looked at each other and said, we're missing out on so much. There's so much of Europe that we need to see, and the culture and things that we both really enjoyed while we were there. So we said, maybe when I'm 59 and a half, we'll move to Spain. And
which is a magic number in the United States, because that's when you can start to draw from your retirement accounts.
I was going to ask about
right.
Right. It's a very specific, specific age. But yeah, that's when you can start to.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah.
So through various events that happened, we ended up in Portugal 1 year later.
Right.
And,
wow.
Yeah.
Almost to the day.
Almost to the day. I mean, it was October of 2019. We moved to Lisbon with 6 suitcases. We sold absolutely everything that we owned, including our house, our cars, all of our possessions.
Everything.
And just wanted a clean start. We both retired early and just really were looking for a new adventure. And it's been the adventure of a lifetime. It's really been amazing. We spent 2 years in Lisbon. And after being in quarantine for 2 quarantines during COVID in a small apartment, we decided we needed more space and we needed some projects and things to keep us busy. And, we're looking at people on Facebook who lived out in Central Portugal and other places that were still out walking their dogs and
living their life.
Yeah. And we were stuck in this little 55 square meter apartment in the Arroios neighborhood of Lisbon. So we decided to kind of branch out and search for properties, and we ended up finding this really incredible property in Salgueiro de Lomba, which is about 25 minutes south of Coimbra. And we've been living here for about a year.
Yeah.
Amazing. And if I can add to the stream some visuals.
Please excuse me. We've got a screaming person upstairs.
I did hear a scream off camera.
I will catch up
we'll see in a
shortly,
little
but
while. Okay.
I will tune back in.
Yes, screaming people take priority for sure.
Yes, there's your Insta. If I say it in a young person kind of way, your Insta there, and some beautiful scenes of what you're doing in Central Portugal. It wasn't quite like that, was it? On this picture here, that's somewhere down the street. That's not your place.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, that's down the street. It looked like that 20 years ago when the previous owner bought the property.
Did it really?
Yeah, it was a ruin when the previous owner bought the property, and he breathed new life into it, along with several other buildings in the neighborhood.
Yes.
And
that was the building there. You just scrolled past.
Sorry.
The upper right.
Oh, okay, this one here.
Yeah, that's what it looked like when he bought it. So,
Really?
yeah, he did a lot of work 20 years ago, and then it suffered from some lack of upkeep in the recent years as he aged. So we're taking that next step and adding a lot to the property now.
Sometime in mid-August, we had a knock at the front door, and it was a gentleman who was the original contractor that was hired to restore this house from a ruin to what it is today. And he said he had pictures, and he wanted to know if we'd be interested. And we said, absolutely.
Yeah.
So on our Instagram, you'll see that there's a bunch of before and after. The before pictures were from about 2000, before the renovation actually happened.
Right.
And then the after pictures are current pictures of what it looks like today.
Yeah.
Superb. Okay, well, I'll put the Instagram address into the chat now, and people can have a look at those whilst they're listening to you and what happened not long ago, really. So there you are. You're established in Central Portugal. It is a beautiful place. Here's a little. It's like a snapshot of the various stages of your life here in Portugal. That's a lovely picture, a lovely set of pictures there. And so, give us a bit of a backstory. Then, a normal kind of week. Heading towards the weekend, a little bit of a cough. Is that where it all started? With a little bit of a cough?
Yeah. So what had happened was essentially I was beginning to feel tired after walking shorter and shorter distances. There's a hill that goes to where we park, and normally I could just walk up that hill with no problems, and then I could make it 3/4 of the way up, and I had to rest, half the way up, and I had to rest. So I was becoming more and more out of breath, and a friend of mine had recently had a cough. We'd spent some time together, and I thought to myself, "Oh, I just have bronchitis or something like that." So eventually, it devolved into I couldn't sleep through the night because I was coughing so loudly or strongly, and so the next morning I woke up on a Saturday morning and said, "That's it, I'm going to the doctor." So we used the public healthcare system out here in Central Portugal because in our area it's well funded and well staffed and whatnot. So I went to the doctor. I got up early, went by myself because we actually had guests that weekend. So I just told Bill, I'm going to the doctor. I'll be back in an hour. So I drive over to the local Centre de Saúde. Ends up I have to wait 2 hours to see somebody because there's a line of people getting vaccinations is what it is. So I wait, I see the doctor. The doctor on duty for the weekend is not our normal doctor and does not really speak a lot of English. But I mean, I have a cough. How hard could it be? So I go in, I talk to him in my limited Portuguese. He listens to my heart. And he does it again, and he does it again. He says, okay, you have to go to Coimbra to get you have to go to the hospital to get a EKG or an ECG, I think it's called in Britain. So I go for an EKG, and he says, and this is where it got complicated because what I found out is what he was telling me is that somebody should drive me to the hospital. And what I thought was that he was asking me if I could drive myself. And so I was like, yeah, I can drive myself. I got my car right outside, no problem. So which hospital do I go to? Chuk in Coimbra, which is like half an hour away. I'm like, okay, it's Saturday. I'm thinking in my head, I guess I have to go to Chuk because it's Saturday, and that's the only place that can do the EKG on a Saturday. Because why would he make me drive half an hour when there's a lab like much closer? But whatever. So I just go to Coimbra. I text Bill and say, hey, I'm on my way to get an EKG. Doctor said I have to get it today. I'll be back as soon as I can. And don't tell him where I'm going, because I'm thinking like I'm going to go and then be home in an hour. So
yeah, I thought he was going to the hospital in Avalar, which is 10 minutes away.
Right. So I go and I mistakenly leave my phone in the car in the parking lot. The walk from the parking lot to the hospital, I don't know if you've ever been to this hospital, but the parking lot is far away. By the time I get to the check-in station, I am exhausted because, again, I can't walk really far before I'm exhausted. I'm almost heaving. And I get there. I hand them the letter that the doctor gave me to describe my problems. And the lady reads the letter. She's like, oh. And she has a serious look on her face. I'm like, oh, my God, I just need an EKG. I have a cough. Can I get like something for this cough? And can I go home? Nope. Go sit over there. Okay. Somebody will be with you in a moment. And I say, can I go get my phone because I forgot my phone? No. You cannot go get your phone. Go sit over there. Okay. Yikes. So I go sit over there. 2 minutes later, a nurse comes out, grabs me, drags me in the back and does my blood pressure and my pulse and all that. And does it again, looks at me, does it again. Because have you been sitting down? I'm like, yeah, I've been over there 2 minutes. I said, but I need to go get my phone. Can I go get, because when I'm sitting still, I feel perfectly fine, right? Perfectly fine. Can I go get my phone? She's like, no, maybe after the doctor sees you, but right now you're going to wait and you can get your phone in a few minutes after you see the doctor. Okay. So the doctor comes back like 5 minutes later, grabs me and pulls me back another layer in the labyrinth of the hospital. So I'm in from the waiting room to the check-in station to now I'm in emergency, right? So I'm in this big room with 50 beds and it's like a triage station. And the doctor talks to the nurse, she comes over, she does some exams and she's like, hold on, we're going to do an EKG right away. I'm like, oh, well, this is great because then I'll be able to go home. Like, this is way faster than I thought it would happen.
Back home for dinner.
So they roll over this machine. They do the EKG. And I was like, while she's doing the EKG, I'm like, yeah, so I need to go get my phone. Is that okay? And she's like, no, you're not going anywhere. And I'm like, why? I don't understand why this is such a problem. She wheels the machine around and she's like, your heart rate is 140 beats a minute. I was like, wow, that's kind of high because my normal resting heart rate is 65, 70. And she's like, yeah, it's very high. And it's been that way for a long time. And I'm like, it is? She goes, yeah, you have fluid in your lungs because your heart isn't pumping enough because it's pumping so fast. So this has been going on for a long time. I'm like, well, I have been feeling short of breath for a week. And she's like, a week? And now you're just coming into the hospital? I'm like, no. I thought,
so how are you feeling at this point? I mean, mostly
sitting down, I feel fine, right? Like I feel perfectly normal. Like I could get up and run a marathon. Well, not run a marathon, but you get the idea, right?
At least run to your car and get your phone.
Yeah. Knowing that walking to the hospital from the car exhausted me. But when I'm sitting still, I feel perfectly fine. And she's like, yeah, that's not normal. So we're going to start giving you some drugs to lower your heart rate. Okay, fine. Right. So they start pumping me full of drugs. Nothing works. Nothing's lowering my heart rate. She goes, okay, so this is a problem. You're going to have to stay here tonight. I'm like, okay, well, can somebody go get my phone? Because my husband doesn't know where I am.
Meanwhile, we're like 3 or 4 hours into
this.
We're
and
3 or 4 hours. Yeah. I thought you were just going to go get an EKG. Where the heck are you?
No,
yeah.
She's like, well, so you're sending messages to the phone thinking that...
I'm just thinking in my mind that I haven't heard from him. Last time he messaged me was in the car saying he's going to the hospital for an EKG. Yeah. I thought he was going to the local hospital in Avalar. Meanwhile, he's actually on his way to Coimbra. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So he goes into the hospital and all of this happens and I have no idea what's going on whatsoever.
Right.
Mostly because he doesn't have his phone with him.
Right.
Yes. Indeed.
I'd have been obviously communicating had I had my phone. So I then start like begging every person I see to go get my phone. I start trying to bribe people to go get my phone. I'm like, I will buy you lunch if you go get my phone. I will buy the entire staff coffee today, if somebody goes and gets my phone and they're like, finally, the doctor's like, nobody's going to get your phone. You need to stop. You know, like we can't do that. Right. Like we cannot go into a patient's car. It's strictly forbidden. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, had somebody told me that, because we know it's Portugal, nobody tells you anything unless you ask a specific question, right? So nobody volunteers anything. So then I changed my frame of mind and I'm like, okay, I got to put my Portugal hat on and stop like trying to be an American, right? So I'm like, so nobody can get my phone. So how is it that we can contact my husband, right? And so they're like, well, your husband's right outside. I'll send somebody to get him. I'm like, no, he's not outside. I drove myself. She looks at me like I'm crazy and says, well, the letter that you gave us said your husband drove you to the hospital. The doctor wrote that in the letter. And I said, well, the doctor didn't speak English. And this is where we run into a problem, because they thought my husband was waiting in the waiting room for me. They didn't know that I drove myself. So then she's like, you drove yourself to the hospital? I'm like, yeah, I felt fine sitting down. I thought I was going home after an EKG. So then she's like, okay, give me his phone number. What's the person's name? He's listed as your contact. That's great. Okay. So in the SNS, I have Bill listed as my contact, which is important. If you haven't done that, do that. Go to your local Centre de Saúde and list your important or significant other as your contact, because that is the only person they will call. They're not going to call random people. They will only call your contact. Thank God we had that done. She calls Bill. She tells him, like, here's 2 numbers to call for updates. Like, you know, again, super Portuguese. Like, we're not going to say how he is or what's going on unless you ask. Nobody tells you anything.
Well, I did ask. I mean, of course, she called me and I was like, so is he okay? 4 hours had gone by and I had not heard anything. And I just said, you know, how serious is this? And she just kept saying, we're going to keep him overnight. She really wouldn't say how serious it was. I said, is he having a heart attack? And she said, not at the moment.
What?
Right? Like, that's so what you want to hear when you're talking to the doctor.
Really?
Yeah, really.
It's literally true, but it's not the thing you want to hear.
Again, you have to put your Portugal hat on, right? Because it's a language difference. So they're translating the language to English, and they're very exact, right? So Portuguese people are very exact with information. They only give a certain amount. That's just the way it is. It's a culture. It's not. I'm not trying to say it's a bad thing. Like, that's what it is, and you have to be prepared for that.
Yes. When
dealing with a medical emergency, because things that would just be volunteered in the United States, like they don't tell you.
Yeah. So I was given 2 numbers to call for status, and one was the main number, and then the doctor said, if you can't get through, try this other number. And for 2 or 3 hours, I kept trying and was having a very difficult time. When I did get through to someone, they spoke very fast Portuguese, and I was having a very difficult time understanding them. And I want to preface this by saying, when we lived in Lisbon, we did take the government-sponsored class. It's 150 hours, and we passed with A2 level proficiency. So we do speak a little bit of Portuguese. We certainly can get around our way in a restaurant, or when it comes to food, we can speak Portuguese, right, and have normal day-to-day conversation, but not anything too technical or advanced.
Right.
Well, on the phone, I'm just trying to get status of how he is, and it just wasn't working out. And I was becoming really frustrated. And I said, please, please put someone on the phone who speaks English. This is really serious. I need to know how my husband is. So long story short, my neighbors drove me to the hospital, and I got there around 6 or 7 o'clock.
Right. Because mind you, we only have one car. So we share our car. I have the keys, and there's a spare key somewhere in the house, but I have the car keys. I have the car in the hospital. So Bill has to get a ride from the neighbors, which we have fantastic neighbors. They're happy to bring him. And this is at about 9 o'clock at this point. I haven't eaten at all the entire day because I didn't feel like eating for breakfast. And then by the time I got to the hospital, I was in process. And so I'm like hangry, seriously hangry. And he shows up and they're like, okay, your husband's here. Great. Like, hopefully.
So let me just say, though, I get to the hospital around 7 o'clock, and in true Portuguese fashion, you take a ticket. everywhere you go, you get a
Senha.
little Senha with your number, right?
Yes.
I was thinking I was going to stroll into emergency and someone's going to tell me, "Oh, your husband's over here. You can go see him." No.
So I took the emergency ticket. Did you? Because there'll be a range of tickets as well, won't there? This is a ticket for the emergency queue. This is a ticket for the not so emergency.
Luckily, the guard helped you.
Yeah,
right? The guard was very good.
The guard helped me out, and he walked me outside to a little building, which is like a temporary shelter type building, where there were about 25 maybe people waiting just to get information who had tickets that were ahead of me. I think I was 89 and they were serving 63 or something like that. So it took about 45 minutes to an hour just kind of waiting to get information. So I'll let you go from there.
Yeah. So at 8 o'clock, I'm sitting there in a t-shirt and underwear because they wanted to put me in a hospital gown, and it never happened because the hospital gowns in Portugal are very small. I am not a small person. I am 6'2" and weigh 275 pounds, which means nothing to the folks in England, I guess. But I'm big and tall, right? So I'm 187 centimeters and 125 kilos. So at that point, none of the hospital gowns fit. So I'm just hanging out in my underpants and t-shirt, and they have drugs being pumped into me. And every half hour, they come and check my vitals and adjust the drugs. And I'm hungry. And so at 8 o'clock, he comes in and he's like, okay, like I brought some stuff for you because he said you were staying overnight. He brought some basics. But at that point, he didn't have my phone because the car was locked and he didn't even know where it was parked. So I just gave him the keys. And they said, okay, you're done. You're going upstairs. Bill has to go home. He can't see you again today. I'm like, can he at least bring me my phone? I've been waiting all the time. And they're like, no.
By this point, they must be saying, get this man his phone, for God's sake.
Right, I know. And so you would think. But no, they're like, no, he can't. And you're going upstairs now. And he'll have to come back tomorrow with your phone. Okay, so I have given myself over.
Can I just ask you there? Were you thinking at this point? Now I'm a bit worried about the hospital gown situation for a big fella like yourself, because at the best of times, you see people in a hospital gown and they're open at the back, aren't they? And were you thinking, I'm going to run across the car park in a minute in this gown or this?
I mean, certainly I am not a shy person. So I would have, they said you could go right now, but you have to walk in your underwear. I would have went.
With the gown on like a superhero cape, because that's about as well as it would have fit you, right?
Correct.
It did not fit.
It did not fit. So I get upstairs. So in the end, and I want to say this, the people in the emergency room were fantastic. The doctors, other than the fact that they, it took a while to establish that Bill is not in the waiting room. Like once they figured that out, everything changed, right? They're like, okay, we call him. He's got numbers to contact, but they checked on me every couple of minutes. They wanted to know something like, okay, so you have a spouse at home. Is he able to take care of himself? Do we need to send somebody to the house to make sure that he dresses and eats? Because they don't know the situation, right? So they have a social worker coming to make sure that he's okay.
Excellent.
Yeah, the care was fantastic.
I think we spent the first 5-10 minutes kind of airing some frustrations, but I do want to say, overall, this was a very, very positive experience.
Yeah, sure. And all of life is going to be in this, isn't it? So, I understand. You have a great respect for this country and this culture, but this is a very heightened emergency situation, and some of it is not so great because it can't be in many ways, can it? And that's what we're talking about and how best to deal with it. So it's not in any way Portugal knocking at all. You guys, it's clear you love this place, this country, and all of it, that it's, or most of what it's about, and like the best of us here. So that's the preface, isn't it? That's the frame for this, and it's really
important. The framework of this conversation.
Yeah, and to give a very sort of direct and authentic report of what went on, so that others can know what to do should they, unfortunately, and God forbid, find themselves in a similar situation. That's what we're doing.
I mean, the first axiom I think we have to deal with is always have somebody drive you to the hospital, right? That's the first axiom that you should
noted.
Never forget your phone, right? That's the second axiom because nobody's going to get it for you. But then
contacts and SNS
Contacts and SNS is really important. And these are things that Portuguese people just know, right? Because they were raised here. And for us, Well,
And by that you mean contacts and SNS. You mean like next of kin, contact numbers, and your SNS number. Okay,
all of that.
Fantastic. Can we pause there for a moment? We do have a little bit of feedback and to other things to catch up on, and we need to find out, because I think basically you're in this situation now, right? With the gown and
so yes, as you see the gown, right? So that gown was literally like, that's the hospital gown, and it was like a cape, right? And a short cape at that, a capelet, I would even say. But yeah,
so it's basically draped over the front of them.
Yeah,
I think so. I think it's a pelmet, really, or belt length, isn't it, rather than full length, or not even 3/4. Okay, we got Stephen with us this morning. Bon dia to you, Stephen. Baddies in Iceland tuning in as well. And John and Pam, you're not because of the story. This has everybody on the edge of their seats. He's listening at 3 in the morning or something, like 3:30 in the morning in Colorado, and on earbuds, conveniently on stealth mode, so as not to wake Pam up. Thanks, John, for being here. It makes for an interesting viewing, trying to figure out the conversation solely by gestures and facial expressions, particularly appropriate with yesterday's topic of language learning. Well done, John. Thanks for being here. Owen's in, and yes, a shout out to you, Owen, from John and Pam. Bairandi in the Bairrada region, not too far from you. A todos refreshed and glorious Bairrada. Breathe in that fantastic fresh air, or maybe the rain has passed there. A blue diamond from Gary Austin. Is that how he's feeling this morning, I wonder? Anna Lucia, great to have you here again. Morning from St. Helens in UK. Keeping the fort, holding the fort there. Fantastic. 11 degrees in Sheffield in the UK. And greetings, Brab. Great to have you here this morning. And from the Algarve. Greetings from the Algarve. The sun's back. Oh, okay, so it's past there. Bon dia from Anna. And dad jokes, which we will have at the end of the show. We got a lot this morning, and there was even a hospital-related one. There's a doctors and nurses specially themed one. Not sure quite what this means. A cucumber and a football. Oh, well done. You cracked that code very quickly. There's you go. There's your pickle pool. I haven't tried paddle tennis yet. This is where we went off on the prickle pickle problem earlier on. It was pickleball before Mrs. M got hold of it anyway. Pickly ball, that's another variation. Pickly ball is a plastic ball the size of a tennis ball and 1/3 of a tennis court. A club I play at. Val pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the USA. Well, there you go. We've learned that this morning. I think we're into at least it's double figures with the dad jokes. Thanks for all of those, Pete. Supplementing T-Duct supply this morning. We talked about gas pipelines this morning, funnily enough. Morning from a thundery Peñascoso. No work in the garden today. Keep inside, Paul. Cup of tea. Put your feet up and make the most of it. WhatsApp, I wonder if that's back. So if you're having a WhatsApp problem, I think there is a bit of an outage with some of their service today. And a power cut up in Alvagra as well. One off or the first of many. You never really know, do you? That's the problem. Bob's in as well, talking about Sri Lanka earlier on. And Darren, good morning, Darren. Great to have you here this morning. WhatsApp is down, according to... What's he doing listening to Radio 1? We need your full attention, please, here. Gary Orgles, at last, we're having broadband connected right now. Still on generator and bottled water until Wednesday. Living the dream in their new dream home in Portugal there. And yes, the Portuguese saying of the day, even if you see a female monkey in silk, she's still a monkey. Of course, that's what it means. Silly us. Right. Amazing. And John's got to go to bed now. So 2 o'clock. Well done, John. You'll see this on the replay, no doubt. Bon dia from Pam in Alcabasa this morning, who didn't enjoy working for British Gas either, like Mrs. M. And we have some feedback coming in about you two. Finally, loving these guys, says by Randy.
No.
And seriously, great storytelling. Yes, as I said, people are on the edge of their seats now to find out what happens next in this amazing and unexpected. I mean, basically, you were entertaining, weren't you, for the weekend? You had friends round, and you just were popping down to the health centre to have this annoying cough sorted out. And here you are. In this condition, suddenly in the university hospital. That's what CHUC stands for, isn't it?
Yes.
It's Coimbra Hospital, the university hospital.
Central Hospital, University Coimbra.
Yeah.
Okay, Jim's glad you're fine now. Bon dia todos, because we can see that the story ended well, thankfully. I'm glad you're okay. I'm in, says Will, listening patiently. Is that a joke? Listening patiently.
Very good. Hospital joke. That
especially
joke.
during COVID, Dr. Jean says many visitors weren't allowed in the ERs. It was terrible for everyone, patients, family, but also staff who had to, yes, super frustrating for the staff constantly having to explain this. Lots of sick people without family. It's tragic, wasn't it? Absolutely tragic. Connie's in as well. Victoria, thanks for sharing your story, guys. Glad it turned out to be a good experience. I think we're only about halfway through, aren't we? We need to find out more, and we need to find out how to prepare. Sarah's in. Look at this, 3:30 in the morning. Somewhere near Kansas. That is such a good way of putting it. Somewhere near Kansas, isn't it? Serenity prayer. Don't stay calm. The world is being destroyed by sociopaths. Okay, we'll have to come back to that. We're talking about Marcus and Bill's big, Portuguese health service adventure this morning. So yes, let's take it from here then. There you are. You're surrounded by the best kit in the world by the look of it. What was the stuff like? The technology like in hospital?
So the technology was everything I would have expected. So I will say I've never actually stayed in a hospital before anywhere. So this was the first for me. I have nothing to compare it to. But it looked very hospital-like, right? Like there was machines everywhere and there was a lot of beeping going on and there was wires attached. Like I felt like I was in a very advanced hospital room, right? Like technologically sound hospital room. So they hook me up. I have wires attached to me everywhere. And I'm supposed to sleep like this, mind you, right? So, but the end result is I get up to the room. They shuffle around to find something to eat because I'm like, yeah, I haven't eaten all day. Could I just like have a piece of fruit or something? So the nurse is mortified that I haven't eaten all day because it's Portugal, right? So they eat 5 times a day here. So the fact that I haven't eaten is a cardinal sin. Yeah. So she shuffles around. She finds me a piece of fruit and some cookies. And I'm like, okay, great. At least I have something. And they give me something to knock me out and put me to sleep. I sleep through the night. And then the daily routine begins the next day. So Sunday morning at like 6:15, somebody wakes me up. They draw blood. They give me 2 shots. And they take my vitals, right? And then I'm allowed to go back to bed. And they put a stack of pills on my tray and say, take these when breakfast comes. Okay. No explanation of what the pills are, because again, it's like nobody tells you unless you ask. Nobody tells you anything. Okay. So, but I dutifully, I'm like, yeah, man, whatever. I got to take these pills. I'm going to take the pills. Later on during the morning, after breakfast, a nurse actually stops by to give me another shot. And then I ask, because I saved the wrappers, the pills come all individually wrapped. So I save the wrappers. And I'm like, so what is this for? What is this for? And she's like, oh, I'll get the doctor to explain them to you. Okay, great. So the doctor comes in like half an hour later, tells me what the pills are for. This one's to slow your heart rate. This one's a blood thinner, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So then I'm on this, somebody used the term hamster wheel earlier in the show. And I'm on this hamster wheel of like blood pressure readings, pills, shots, and meals. Because like every 2 hours they feed you in the hospital. What they feed you is a whole other question, but they feed you in the hospital. So now I'm on this hamster wheel. Bill shows up the next day. You know, it's Sunday now at 2:00. The first time visitors are allowed in. Brings me some more clothes, my phone. Right, and takes that picture that you just saw.
Hallelujah! You got the phone now.
Right. I got the phone.
It's amazing how completely disconnected you are without your phone.
Yeah, like normally
completely disconnected.
Right, like we've been together a very long time. So like me being separated from him and not saying like good night or something. Like even when I would travel for work, he'd still text back and forth. Like so, totally cut off. And in a stressful situation. So I have to give myself up to the process, right? What other choice do I have?
And let me just interject here. He mentioned the visitation. So visitors were allowed from 2 to 9 every day. And I had to make an appointment because he was in a room with 2 other people. And they would only allow 1 visitor in the room at a time. So that's not per patient. That's in the entire room.
Right.
So they were very careful about letting a certain number of people in the room at one given moment.
Right. COVID. Yeah.
COVID, or I don't know if that's standard practice now. I'm not sure,
Mhm.
but and they were very careful about putting on a fresh mask and
Yeah.
sanitizing my hands and all that.
Yeah.
But initially, setting up the appointment was not easy because it was calling one of those numbers, and then while we found that the doctors and some of the nurses spoke pretty good English, the staff at the hospital did not.
Right.
So calling to make an appointment to see him became stressful.
We'll explain how we got around that. So, yeah.
Yeah, we need to hear that.
Yeah, the auxiliaries, or auxiliaries, whatever it's called in Portuguese, I forget. But the functionary workers, right? Like the folks that are cleaning and the folks that are answering the phone or just bringing me food or whatever it is. Like very few of those spoke English, but all the doctors and nurses spoke fantastic English. But I made an effort. I figured I'm here. I might as well try to always start every conversation in Portuguese. Right.
Yeah.
And then we went from there. Even with the doctors and nurses, they would always ask, do you speak Portuguese? I would say a little. And I would stop them when it got too complicated. I'd be like, yeah, no, you need to switch to English because this is beyond my ability. But what it did do is the functionaries that I dealt with all spoke to me only in Portuguese. And it was great for my Portuguese skills because I would tell them you have to speak slowly. And they would go word by word for me. And it worked well. Like I actually learned, I feel like in that 2 weeks in the hospital, my Portuguese went like doubled in capability, right? Just from being immersed in it for a 2 week period.
But there are better ways. There are better ways to learn Portuguese, right?
No doubt. So I know all kinds of words that I shouldn't know, right? Cardiology,
okay.
Right? So
and your roommates too.
And my roommates too were older gentlemen,
Portuguese gentlemen.
Yeah, Portuguese gentlemen that were in for scheduled procedures and only spoke either French or Portuguese, and I spoke no French, so Portuguese it was. And so,
and we got some good restaurant recommendations from them.
Yes, they were not shy about telling me where to eat, what to eat. Yeah, I was like, okay,
maybe it was worth it.
But in the end, so I'm on this hamster wheel of shots and blood pressure readings and meals, and so with nothing to do, right? Because the only channel that is playing, because the other two roommates want to watch RTP1, like I'm not going to argue, so let them watch RTP1, but that I can only do that for so long before it's mentally exhausting trying to translate, and I'm only translating 10 or 15%, right? So like I can kind of understand, but not really. And after a while, that gets old. But at this point, I had my iPad and I had my phone. So, I was on YouTube just watching YouTube videos or Netflix.
Good Morning Portugal.
Right, Good Morning Portugal. So
thank you.
Yeah. So and I had my earphones, so I was able to do all that. And but really it was just about waiting, right? Like the whole thing was about waiting. And my highlight every day was, of course, getting a visit. And so that visit, though, I had mentioned how we got around scheduling the visits. So the nurses were good enough to me and I would say my husband speaks Portuguese, but not very well. And telephone conversations are particularly difficult. And they understood that. I said, so would you mind writing his name on the visitor list for me at 2:00? And she was like, yes, no problem. I will do that for you. I know phone conversations are very hard. And so they would write his name in on the visitor list. And I had to ask every day to say what time is right. And I would always say, what's the best time? I don't want to interrupt anybody else's visit. And they would come back with a time. And then I would just text them and say, show up.
So what a great idea.
Excellent. Yeah.
So the Portuguese word is cunha, which literally means doorstop, but it holds the door open.
Right.
And depending on who you speak to, some Portuguese will say that cunha can be used positively or negatively. And basically what a cunha is someone who helps you out.
Someone on the inside, right? So like you have an in, we would say in English, somebody on the inside that can do things for you that you normally wouldn't be able to do, right? So this one nurse was my cunha where she was like, yeah, no problem, I'll write them on. So I always asked her because she
gets a Christmas card from Marcus and Bill now.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, they got treats. That was the other thing. So, again, I'm locked to my bed, and I laugh. I'm not locked to my bed, but I'm on this chest wires thing, right? So I'm locked to my bed through wires, and I'm not allowed to even get up and go to the bathroom fun, right? So
Yes, I've heard of this. Yes.
yeah, so it's bedpans, and then for the first 2 days it was bedpans and a urinal bottle, and I'm like, okay, like it is what it is. But what I come to find out is eventually they let me go and use the toilet, but I'm still supposed to pee in the urinal bottle because they're monitoring my fluid intake and output, right? So apparently that's important because I'm on diuretics, blah blah blah.
They're taking the pee, of course.
Yes, they're measuring it. Oh yeah, they're walking away with it and like doing things with it. I don't know what they're doing, but they're doing things with it. So
while this was a 12-day process, one of the reasons it took so long was because they had a very methodical plan on how to deal with this.
Yeah.
His heart rate would not go down
for like
for 5 days.
Right. The first 5 days I'm sitting there with beep, 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 you know.
And they tried as many medicines as they could before they did something that was a little bit more serious, which was an endoscopy and
a sonar thing of my heart, like from the back, right? Because from the front, when they do it, a sonar, the chest bones are in the way, the ribs and whatnot. And so they said, okay, we have to do one down your throat so that we can get a more clear picture of your heart. Okay, right. So by the way, they don't put you out for that. They give you some twilight drug that you don't really remember it, but you know, you're not out. So they do that. They say now they're like, okay, so part of the problem is you have a clot and we have to dissolve the clot before we do anything else, because if we don't, that clot could shoot out of your heart and like end up in your brain and you could have a stroke. Well, you know, again, it's very dry. When the doctors are talking to you, it's a translation to a second language, and it is very direct and dry because it's Portugal.
Yeah.
Zero subtlety, right? So they're like, yes, you could die from a massive stroke if this thing leaves your heart. And I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty serious. But at the same time, they're like, but don't worry, you know, like after they see the look on my face, but don't worry, it's going to be fine. We're going to do this, this, and this, and it'll dissolve the clot. Okay. So now I start getting shots more often. It's clot busters is what I figure out later, because they don't tell you what they're giving you. You have to ask, right? So, because then it goes from getting like 2 drugs a day to now I'm on 6, and they're giving me more shots, and it's to dissolve the clot in my heart. Mm-hmm. So after a few days, I get another procedure where they go in through my wrist and take a 3D map of my heart.
Through your wrist?
Through my wrist, yeah.
The vein in his
vein
wrist.
in your wrist. Yeah, it's not fun. Like 0 stars, don't recommend. Like it is not fun.
Oh my word.
You don't get knocked out, right? You get no anesthesia because they have to keep you awake.
Well, they numb your arm, though.
They numb your, yeah, of course.
Listen to me talking like, you know, it's nothing, but
yeah. So they numb your arm, but in my head, right? Because again, the doctors don't tell you anything unless you ask. This doctor was like super, right? They're on this machine that's doing 3D mapping. I can see the whole thing going on, but I kind of have a panic attack because like I feel like I can feel something going up my arm, even though I know I can't, because they deaden your arm. Yes. But still, I'm like, something's going up my arm. I can feel it. And then you work yourself into a panic attack. So on the table, I'm having a panic attack. My heart rate drops. My breathing gets shallow. And they recognize all this, and they give me a shot of atropine to like make everything better. Yeah. So the atropine, again, 0 stars, atropine, 0 stars. It really sucks. But it calms me down. Everything goes back to normal, you know. And so at that point, they finish the procedure and they're like, yeah, the good news is, like, here's this video. Look at this video. Your vein or your arteries are completely clear. There's no blockages. You don't have any sclerosis. I'm like, oh, great. You know, like,
I will say that night when I went to see him after this procedure and the atropine was the worst that I had seen him.
Yeah.
And that's when I started thinking, oh, shit. Like, seriously, like, what is my plan B? Like,
yeah, so I'm already dead in the hospital and Bill's mine.
We haven't really talked about that. And this whole experience has kind of made us think, like, we need to start talking about what happens. You know?
Yeah, well, because you have the death and dying programs on here. And, like, I'm not going to say I started watching them right away. But I'm like, maybe I should watch.
Can I apologize for the timing of that?
Yeah, no.
It wasn't great for you, was it? I'm sorry.
I'm like, maybe I should review that program. I don't know. So, but the end result is so then there's more procedures. my heart rate finally comes down. They do some more procedures, and it turns out what is wrong with me is that I have a left side fibrillation, or AFib, atrial fibrillation. And what they find out is that I also have sleep apnea, and it's almost bordering on severe. Now, Bill has sleep apnea, and he's been using a machine for years. And I know what it is, but I was having it without snoring enough to think like, oh, I might have sleep apnea.
Mm-hmm.
So they think that was the main contributing factor, because all my other factors, like I don't smoke, I don't drink often. I'm in relatively good cardio shape. I mean, I'm overweight, no doubt, but like I can walk for a couple miles. It doesn't bother me. So like all the risk factors, they kept asking me how much I smoked. Like every day, the doctors were like, how much do you smoke? I'm like, I don't smoke. How much do you drink? Like, I don't know, a couple glasses of wine a week. And they're like,
it might be a cultural thing.
Are you sure? Right. And I'm like, no, they don't believe that I only drink a couple of glasses of wine a week. That's absurd, right? You don't finish a bottle when you open it.
That's
right.
You're in Portugal. Come on.
Exactly. So, but they're like, I felt like I was being interrogated over and over again regarding my habits, because they could not believe that I didn't do any of these things that were risk factors. And that's when they said, okay, after the first night, they're like, we're going to put a sleep apnea machine on you, like a monitor to test you. And so it turns out I have sleep apnea. A couple of days later, they show up with a machine. And this is still shocking for us as Americans. They just like give you stuff here, which doesn't make any sense to us. Like, I didn't have to pay anything. And
I want to make sure we squeeze in, because we're getting close to 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
One really big difference between living here in the US, people don't go to the hospital because they're afraid about how much it's going to cost.
Right.
Yeah.
Even with healthcare insurance, you end up paying a lot more.
Right.
One of the reasons, not the only, but certainly one of the contributing factors in moving here was, for us to retire in the US, we were looking at healthcare premiums of $900 per month per person, plus deductibles. So it was easily going to cost us $2,000 a month just for insurance.
Right.
And then if you have to go to the doctor, it's $125 for a doctor visit. God forbid you go to the emergency room, depending on how long and what they do, it could be hundreds or thousands.
Right.
I mean, so this whole time I'm thinking, okay, we're on day 5, 8, 10.
Right.
Like, how much is this going to cost? So I started asking Portuguese friends. They're like, probably won't cost you anything, if, maybe €5 a night. And I said, are you sure?
Yeah.
So every time we get something in the mail, I'm like, oh, this has to be the bill from the hospital.
Oh, bless you.
I
got follow-up letters.
He got follow-up letters. We have not paid a dime. We have not been asked for a credit card upon admission or anything. Like,
nobody asked for my insurance card, because we do carry private insurance, right? So we have private insurance.
And I just want to say, we are eternally grateful for this entire experience. I mean, I can't explain enough what a difference, and kind of a weight off your shoulders of when you're dealing with something this important, to not have to worry about going into debt because someone is sick.
Right.
We've known people who've lost their houses in the US because they can't pay their medical bills.
Right.
It's ridiculous. So I just want to say to Portugal, we are eternally grateful for the care, for everything.
Yeah.
It's been amazing.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, here. It is incredible, isn't it? Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for saying that.
So in the end, we had. Oh, I'm sorry, Carl. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to come back to a few things that you were saying, and we got some questions. James makes the point here. I've estimated the out-of-pocket full fee cost in Portugal for healthcare is about 10% of the insured costs in the US. And just a quickie here. I mean, he's asking which hospital. That was Chuk, you said, which is Coimbra.
Yeah, the main campus in Coimbra. Yep.
Yeah, there you go. Morning, Gene, as well. Medical in the States is beyond ridiculous. And this is the other end of the spectrum here, isn't it? The care you received. 3 things that I think I'd like to just check in with you was, one, you said about you really a stranger, foreign land, foreign situation.
Mm-hmm.
You've never even been in hospital before. You surrendered to the process.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, what you had to do, right? How was that? How did you do that?
So after the first day of being there, what I really figured out is that, like, okay, I've never been in a hospital before, so anywhere. So I can't compare this to anything. But what I thought to myself is like, okay, I'm in the hospital. I'm just going to be as kind as I can to the people around me, and hope that reflects back to me, right? So I'm going to start with being as kind as I can, and I'm just going to ask questions with an open mind and accept the responses for what they are. And so that's surrendering to the process. When they put pills on the table, I don't be like, why are you giving me pills? It's like, oh, what are these? Like, what kind of pills am I getting? And just be happy about everything that I'm doing and be inquisitive, as opposed to asking too many questions, right? So in my head, that's what I'm thinking. That's how I'm going to approach this. And it worked really well. The staff was phenomenal. They were very happy to explain everything if I asked. They're very happy to do it in English. And even I had this conversation with a doctor about, I said, in the US, it's a little different. There's a lot more back and forth between the doctor and the patient about the treatment plans and drugs and all of that. She goes, and this really sealed it for me. She said, okay, I know what you mean. My cousin is a doctor in the United States. She's constantly afraid of being sued, so they have to over-explain everything with what they do. Here, people just trust us to know what we're doing, and we know what we're doing.
Well, that's the other part of my question is you said things aren't explained necessarily. And that for some people is quite an old-fashioned way of just doing what the doctor tells you to do, right? And you explain how it is in the States there. Part of it, of course, is fear of litigation. I think in the UK, there was a time where you just, anyone with a stethoscope or a white coat, they told you what to do. My parents' generation would just do anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a little bit different now, isn't it? You get to see your notes and all this sort of stuff. But Portugal, from your observation in this situation, you basically are being told what to do, given the medications, and you go along with that process, unless you are a bit curious and then ask the questions, and then they will be answered.
Yeah, they're happy to answer any questions. They didn't rush through any answers. Every time I asked a question, they were happy to answer it. It really was. It would be consultative as long as I was driving the questions.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
So, but the standard practice is more like, this is what you're going to do, and not tell you why. It's just that you're sick. You came here because you're sick. We know what to do, and this is what you're doing.
And by the way, anyone we've spoken to that works in a hospital in the U.S. or friends have all said that the process was the right process.
Yeah. So,
I mean, what they did and the plan they developed was the right thing to do. There just wasn't as much hand-holding, let's say.
Right.
And it might have felt worse because we didn't speak the language really well. Sure. And it was the first time. And listen, this is something that's been on my mind for a long time. So thanks to Marcus for being the guinea pig for
Yeah. In all of our scenarios, I'm not the one that's in the hospital. Usually, he's worried about being in the hospital.
What a turnaround! You took it for the team on this occasion.
Yeah.
The next most important question, and a biggie: how was the food? I know you kind of glossed over it earlier on. Is hospital food the same the world over?
No, and I'll tell you what, it's actually better in Portugal. So I've never been in a hospital, but what I've noticed, funny enough, I had a high school friend that I had on Facebook. Her husband was in the U.S. in the hospital at the same time I was, and he was in for bypass surgery, heart bypass surgery. And when you looked, and I would post pictures of the food, and she's like, "Oh my God, that looks great compared to what he's getting." But what they serve for food in the hospital in the United States is much more processed. It's like, a blueberry muffin that was baked somewhere else and then in a prepackaged plastic something or other. And so all of it was very highly processed food. Whereas what I was getting was some type of protein, and then a vegetable and a carb, and then the dessert would be fruit. So breakfast was very light. It would be a roll with some spreadable President cheese or something, or a little thing of jam.
Like being at an Airbnb.
Yeah, it was exactly.
You have food every 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, like they fed me breakfast and then another roll with coffee around 10 o'clock, and then
Coffee, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean the coffee was horrid. Absolutely, it was like instant coffee. You know, it is what it is.
Yeah,
So
I
at
think
least
one
they're trying to
major
give you a
difference,
coffee.
yeah,
because I've been in the hospital in the U.S., is that every morning there would be like a little menu you could choose from. You know, what kind of protein do you want? Do you want meat or chicken or whatever?
Right.
You don't get the choice of how it's prepared, but you could choose chicken or whatever.
There might be 2 or 3 choices.
Here, there was no choice. You got what you got. And some days it was bacalhao. So if you don't like bacalhao,
it's too bad.
That's right. But when we were visiting our friend in Torres Vedras at the weekend, I was trying to park up while Louisa went inside, and I saw some dinner ladies, and I thought, this is great. The food is actually cooked in the same city, because that's not always the case, is it? In London, I think you've got these industrial estates miles away that bring the food in, all wrapped up in plastic. Yes. This is probably cooked on site, right?
Everything it seems to be prepared on site. Granted, is it to my taste? No, everything was overdone. It's hospital food, right? It's been sitting in a steam cabinet as it comes up to your room. Like, so the vegetables are too soft. It is what it is, right? It's hospital food, but it was healthy, definitely healthy food. It was real food, and it was healthy food.
Amazing.
There was fish once a day. Not a fan. Like, if you don't like fish, too bad. I ate it. What choice do I have? But like, I found out I really don't like ray or raya, it's called in Portuguese. Like, that is not my thing.
Bony, right?
Yeah, it's difficult to eat. My Portuguese neighbors in the hospital, like my roommates, help me eat the fish. They're like, no, this fish you have to cut this way and this.
Fantastic!
Portuguese people know fish. Like, it's just
Marcus mentioned neighbors, and I just want to make a quick shout out to our Portuguese neighbors, the Geddes family.
Yeah,
they.
Oh, in the house. Yeah.
Here where we live in Salgueiro de Lumba, they are the most kind, sweet, thoughtful people. While he was in the hospital, I was invited to lunch and dinner. They always bring us stuff from their gardens. They're just so helpful. When they found out something was wrong, they were the first to come over and just, I can't say enough. Yeah. And our British friends too, by the way, that live close by.
Yeah, the neighborhood spirit was definitely alive and well, and Bill was taken care of because I do all the cooking. So, like, other than the grilled cheese sandwich, like, he's not one to cook. So they all took care of him, made sure that he was fed.
That's wonderful.
Was there a question about medical insurance or something?
Yeah, we're going to come to that now. We'll go past 10 o'clock, safe to say. But look, here we are and you had days like that one, didn't you? I think a rather serious place, and you had days like this one. Much better there, and it feels like we need to resolve. You've had the treatment, you're recovering, and there's probably more to say about that. And there's a few questions and observations coming in. So if you will, if you could let us know, the worst is behind us now, right? It's safe to say.
Yeah. So to wrap it up, the treatments, I go through this process. They come to find out that I do need one more treatment that has to be scheduled because I have to be put under. And so they get my heart rate under control with medication. I'm on a bunch of pills now that I have to take until I get this other treatment. I've received follow-up letters from the hospital to come in for a follow-up appointment and schedule the procedure. I expect that to be done hopefully January, February. But in the meanwhile, I have some pills that I have to take and, keep my exercise up and try to lose weight, blah, 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 all of that stuff. So I'm fine. I feel better than I ever did. The sleep machine I got in the hospital, I was able to take home with me, and that has made a big difference. I feel like now that my sleep apnea is being treated, I do feel more rested. I feel great.
Super.
The prognosis is good.
Yes, the prognosis is good.
Excellent news. We couldn't go without saying that. So let's have a look at a few of these questions. And how people might prepare and know what to do. Do you have to carry a medical or insurance card to get admitted to the hospital? How was that?
So no, if you're going to a public hospital, they didn't ask me for anything. The doctor, because I had been to the doctor, he wrote a little letter about what was wrong with me. I gave that to the to the clerk on the first floor, and that was it. They didn't ask me for a thing.
But that Recita prescription probably had your numero de utente.
Oh yeah, it had my data.
Yeah.
Right, so it had my identification already
but they didn't ask for our private insurance. We have private insurance for Allianz. They didn't ask for that.
No,
nothing.
Yeah, because it was a public hospital. If you go to a private hospital, they may ask you how you intend to pay.
Yes,
but
they're not going to be on arrival. Not on arrival, I think.
Exactly, and there's other videos to watch about that. That Serenity interview that you did was fantastic, and it gives you a lot more information than we can cover here. Yeah.
Which incidentally, Gary, you were asking about Stephanie's prescriptions. Serenity, I would say, is the go-to place. I'll send you a link for that, Gary, later on. Okay.
On the prescriptions, I will say one thing. Again, I'm not sure how long Gary's been here, but it's you have to be Portuguese about it, right? So if you go to a pharmacy and you say, I want to get this, and you bring, let's say, your bottle, or maybe you got a prescription from a doctor here, I need to get this. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry, that's unavailable. Their translation of the fact that they don't have it at the moment might come across as this is not possible.
Yeah.
And you have to dig deeper and say, well, is it not possible because of this, or is it not possible because the term not possible to us in English, when we first got here, we're like, oh my God, not possible. Like that does not mean what you think it means, right? It just means that right now in this moment, it's not going to happen now, but it doesn't mean that it won't happen in the future if you set the conditions properly.
Well, so a bit like not having a heart attack now. He's not actually having a heart attack now. Yes.
Right.
Which is true, but it takes a bit of mental processing. Okay. Yes. Very good point. Well made. Here in Portugal, going back to what you were saying about being looked after and the incredible care and the cost of it, which is none. Here in Portugal, many elderly people are pushed into homelessness too if they have large medical bills. So it does happen in Portugal, says Fiona. The churches provide some places for them, but nowhere near enough. I think possibly the point there is with acute care, you're just looked after and that's it, right? I suspect this is more chronic conditions where this happens. Not that's an excuse at all, but I think it might be in some way an explanation with long chronic care and the costs of that, Fiona. Thank you for putting that to us.
And certainly as a side note, the medications that I'm on cost about 70 euros a month.
Right.
So I can appreciate the fact that that 70 euro a month bill to many Portuguese people would be completely unaffordable.
Sure.
Completely.
Yeah.
So I can see where there are ongoing care costs that would create stress for a lot of Portuguese people. We're in a fortunate enough situation where we can absorb that 70 euros and maybe not go out to dinner an extra time. You know, like it's not going to hurt us.
Well, it kind of brings up another question though, Carl. Like, so what do people do, especially immigrants, right? When you're in your 80s, 90s, you know, we've joked with our neighbors that we have a guest house and that we would hire like a home care aide that would live in our guest house and go around to everyone's house for 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's just something to think about.
Yeah.
It really is. It's on the agenda at the moment, isn't it? With experiences we've had and obviously that you've had recently. This is the thing. And it's like, you know, we didn't like to have the death and dying conversations. We probably should have them, and we will. And it's the same with care in older age. You know, why not get tooled up for it and talk about it and prepare for it, even if you never use it? Because if you don't, you get a shock, don't you? And this is you're so right to bring it up, Bill. This is a real thing, and I hope it is on the agenda now for us as a community and we can have some fun. It started off as a joke, as being like, you know, a Faulty Towers guest house where we're all going to end up together. But who knows? Who knows what might happen? Casa Alegria in the future. Your kindness is probably contagious. I suspect that did really work, how you described that, Marcus, before. What do you think that treatment would have cost in the US? Jean's taken a little bit of a look at that. 5-day hospital stay with some critical care, probably $50,000. My goodness.
So I can speak to that directly. Just before we moved here in August of 2019, I had a hernia operation. I was in the hospital literally for 8 hours. I did not spend one night. I was put under so there was an anesthesiologist involved and
Orthoscopic surgery.
Yep. So that bill was almost $40,000. My insurance paid 90%, so we were responsible for $4,000.
Now, right, the policy that we had was, and this is a very common type of policy in the United States, is we paid our premiums through our employer. So we paid our premiums several $100s a month, and then we had the copay, which is the patient responsibility, was 10% of the bill up to $7,500, right? So the first $7,500 every year comes out of our pocket. After that, and while the hospital bill is paying, 90% by the insurance company, 10% to us. So a $40,000 hospital bill means we have to pay $4,000. Once that expense hits $75,000, right? We've paid our 10% or $7,500. Then it's 100% paid by the insurance company. So this stay would have definitely cost me $7,500, even under what would be considered really good insurance in the United States through your employer. So,
not to mention the monthly premiums that would be $1,800 for both of us.
right.
So it's crazy.
It's crazy.
Our monthly premiums for private insurance here is less than $150 US dollars a month.
Right.
Yeah.
So
for two people.
right, for good care.
Incredible.
So
Wow.
yeah.
Well, thank you very much for having a look at that and commenting on that. Thank you, Gene. Thank you for asking that question. Pam, anyone that snores badly, another side note, should be tested for sleep apnea.
So Gary brings up a good point, and I will say this: snoring badly is a sign of sleep apnea. However, it's not the only sign. While I snored a little bit, he was 27 times, mine was 28. Not to be a one-upper, but like mine was 28.
No, you won that. You won that. Very
and so the point is that I didn't snore much. And so what that means, and the doctor told me, while most people who snore badly may have sleep apnea, in about 10% of the cases, the person with sleep apnea does not snore.
Oh.
So if you find yourself getting up and turning over several times a night, if you find yourself suddenly every once in a while, you just startle yourself awake, you probably have sleep apnea and you should get tested for it. You might think like, oh, I had a bad dream and I startled myself awake, because that's what I used to think, but that is not the case.
Sarah has a diagnosis, perhaps.
Yes, through his apnea machine. He slept so soundly he didn't hear. Yeah.
There you go. Sarah, secretly a doctor, possibly. Malpractice, going back to American costs, malpractice insurance, a major expense in the US because of laws. Not surprising, suggests T-Duck, since almost every member of Congress is a trial lawyer.
Now,
Funny,
only 90% are trial lawyers. It's not every. Let's not disparage every single one of them.
All right, only 90. I have often summarized the Portuguese culture as being one of how can I help? So there's an abundance of compassion and kindness. Yes, absolutely. Usually there will be the same or similar medication on a different manufacturer, going back to this not having the same brand names of drugs. The organization Serenity would be good to sign up with. Their medical concierge service. Thanks, Fiona. Being interviewed by Carl, so there's a video about them. There are many and webinars, and we will talk to them again with Expats Portugal, of course. How did you shift from being agitated to calm? I think a lot of that was a mental adjustment, wasn't it? As well as some drugs helped as well, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, they gave me something to sleep every night, so I was on some kind of drug to help me sleep every night. But I think from being agitated to calm, the biggest shift was when I finally got to see Bill in the emergency room. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, he knows where I am, because my biggest agitation was in the beginning, like, I'm here and nobody knows I'm here.
Yes.
And I can't tell anybody, right? And nobody's making phone calls for me. And I don't have a lot of family here. I don't have, it's very isolating to a certain extent when you're an immigrant. And so not having that support system that is naturally available for most people in the United States, not all, but most people in the United States have that natural family support system. And so you have to figure out in advance what you're going to do differently. And so I felt a little bit trapped in the emergency room. But once I saw Bill, I'm like, okay, he knows I'm here.
I was probably more agitated than he was. I was a program manager for a career, and I had managed project managers with project plans, and we always had plan A, B, C, and every question, every scenario answered. And in this case, very few questions were answered right away. And a lot of scenarios were playing in my mind throughout this whole process about what could happen. What's the next step? I mean, is he getting the right care? But I did feel every time I went to see him, he was asking the right questions. They were telling him what they were doing. And it, for him, I think we both felt like he was getting good care, and it was very well thought out.
Right. Oh, and I will bring up one thing. Bill was very good about bringing treats to the nursing staff. And so I'm convinced that while it didn't necessarily get me anything special, I know they appreciated it. So he would bring a box of treats every other day or so to the nursing staff.
So I should make a shout out to Rocha Pasteleria in Avalar.
Yes.
Very good. Yes, yes, definitely. Well, that's a lovely touch. Well, well done on that. Being overweight doesn't help, but this is with sleep apnea. But when I was a teenager and in much better shape, I remember my girlfriend telling me that I stopped breathing at night quite regularly. That's presumably as she slept next to you, just looking at you adoringly and being worried. But how does she know that?
How to get to the show?
Yeah, she should have been asleep. I'm not sure if this is a dad joke. Our friend was in for throat operation. Oh, no, it's not. It's not. But one of Pete's many dad jokes is one. Our friend was in for throat operation and he got murdered by old ladies next to her who kept trying to feed her. She said you have to have a mask on all the time. It was way worse during COVID. And Will, after some of ours and family US experience, we don't allow anything in our system that hasn't been explained. I think we've covered that, haven't we? How to manage that relationship with the medics here. And you cemented your hatred for fish. And improved your Portuguese.
I don't hate fish. I hate overcooked, dried, bony fish. I'm a fish and chips fan. I'm all about it.
Fish and chips, yes. Proper fish and chips.
What's your Insta name? We've done that. That's in the chat there. So it's the Casalomba.
Casalomba 050.
Yes. Okay. And it typically it was 30 minutes past 10. Everyone's putting their questions in now. Oh, come on, guys. We've been here for nearly 2 hours. You could have asked these questions and made these comments ages ago.
We have nowhere to go. So
we have time if you do, Carl.
Right.
I've definitely got to be done by 10:30. Lots of great comments, great interview, great conversation. Smash that like button, please. Cheers, Bob. Some people on low incomes are exempt from paying for prescriptions. That's good to hear.
Okay, that's good.
Was there any question from Neve here? Was there any mention of your vaccination status in relation to your heart complaint? So for people who didn't want to be vaccinated and would fear a tough time in a Portuguese hospital, how was that handled for you?
So there was no mention of my vaccine status to me, but that's all public record here, so I'm sure they know that. I'm not aware
in the health system.
In the health system, right? So I'm sure that they know that I've been vaccinated.
Yeah.
I am not aware of any evidence about vaccinations causing heart issues. I am aware of evidence that COVID has caused heart issues. And incidentally, in August, we both had COVID. So, albeit a mild case for me, Bill was more sick.
We both have had 3 jabs. As a visitor, I was never asked if I had been vaccinated.
Yeah.
But they were careful about, sanitizing hands and masks.
Yeah. But I haven't seen any of that evidence about vaccinations causing heart issues. I mean, if somebody wants to post a link to evidence, that's fine. But I haven't heard anything about that.
Thank you for the question, Neve, and thank you for addressing that, Marcus. Heading to watch Liz. That will be our most recent Prime Minister. Give her embarrassing farewell speech. Take care. See you next time. Can you share the Insta? We have done that. I think it's time. Unless there's anything else you want to add, Mrs. M is squeezing in next to me to hear the end of this epic and brilliant interview. Thank you so much for being here, Marcus and Phil, and to tell us about this. And I think what you were saying, Bill, about preparation and how, despite the irony of being a great project manager and planner, ducks weren't quite in a row on this one, but we can do that collectively, can't we, as a community? I think, to make it easier for people, get the right things in the right place. The 112 pack that you can have by the door, possibly and that is the number, Darren. You asked that earlier on. It is the emergency number 112. Anything else you'd like to add before we cleanse our palate with 1 or 2 dad jokes?
No, just make sure that your contacts are listed in SNS. That's probably one of the biggest things.
Right.
Make sure you know the emergency number, and
don't drive yourself to the hospital.
Even if you have
drive yourself to the hospital.
private insurance, everyone is entitled to use the public system here as well. So
Yes.
make sure that you have established connections at your local Centro de Saúde. That certainly would make things easier.
Right.
And
even if you don't plan on using them, I think it's important to establish a relationship there and say that you live in that town. I'm a resident here. This is where I want my health center to be, because that's listed in the SNS system.
Yes.
So if you got your numero de utente in Lisbon, like we did, as far as the SNS system was concerned, we still lived in Lisbon. Government systems really don't communicate well here. And so when we moved here, we went to the health center and we said, no, we live here now. Please change our health center, right? So they've now Figueiró dos Vinhos Health Center is our health center in the system. And that just makes it easier for prescriptions. It makes everything easier if you ever need to use the public health system. So even if you think you're never going to use it, you should still keep it up to date.
Well said. And Bill, you said the contacts are inside the SNS record, your next of kin and so on.
Yes.
Okay.
Probably the easiest way to update that is to go to your Centro de Saúde.
Yes.
And make
It's
sure
probably the only way to update it,
Yeah.
actually, as a matter of fact.
Make a day of it. Make a day of it. Go to get your ticket, take a book, take a packed lunch, and make a day of it, everybody.
I gotta say, ours is not like that. Our Centro de Saúde is very, like, if we walk in and say we need to do this administrative thing, whatever, the nurses are like, yeah, give me a couple minutes. 10 minutes later, they come grab you. They do whatever it is you need to do, and then you're done.
it's really,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing here living where we live. The Centro de Saúde is not nearly as overworked as the one in Arroios in Lisbon,
Yeah.
where it was just,
We never used that one for that reason.
yeah.
It was, there was lines out the door. Whereas here, we just show up, we check in, and in a couple minutes, we see somebody.
And
Generally speaking,
this is where you live. This is what you're talking about, right? And so
Yeah.
the madronia fruit on the tree and those beautiful.
the middle picture is our little main street with like 4 or 5 houses on it.
Yeah.
Ours is down on the left there.
That's so wonderful. Absolutely lovely. What a fantastic life there. Casa de Lombo 050.
Casa da Lumba
Da Lombo.
050.
Yep.
That's what I said. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We have a doctors and nurses themed joke to get these started. Where's that gone though? Is it up a bit? Oh yeah. Okay. Thank you, Pete. When Diane suggested playing doctors and nurses, I was really hoping for something sexier than being left in a corridor for 2 days. Okay.
Some people are into that.
I talking about being into things. I hate people who complain about breastfeeding in public. I don't want to see it. That's disgusting. Or you can't do that. You're not a woman, and that's not a baby.
Yeah.
All right. Back to there are many this morning. I quite like Gary's one as well. Everyone's chipping in. Oh no, this is Pete's as well. I'm still a bit shaken up. I was involved in quite a violent mugging the other day, but on the plus side, did make a few quid. We can you send these to me, please, Pete? Because there's just too many to find now. What's this? This cost of living crisis is really bad. You should have seen the price of Velcro. What a ripoff! And I'm sorry. Back to the master of the dad jokes, our purveyor of the dad jokes every day. T-Duck. I like puns about needlework, or so it would seem. Complex. Iron Man stops criminals, but Aluminium Man foils their plans. And finally, oh my goodness, we should probably leave it here. Where do criminal rainbows go? Why, Prism, of course. It's a light sentence. Oh my goodness. Marcus, Bill, thank you so much for being here and doing what you've done today. It will be a great help and in a comfort of some kind, of course. It was a horrific experience to go through, but you've gone through it. You've told us all about it, and I think we can make better plans collectively as a response, and we will do that, and we will publish. And maybe you'll come back and add to the conversation that we're having about this. It is important. I think it's very important, and you've done us a great service this morning. So thank you very much for that. Muito obrigado.
All right.
Happy to help. People helped us along the way, so we feel it's important to kind of pay it forward.
Yeah.
All right. So a massive round of applause for you and a tiny car. Pete, actually, That will be revealed what I mean by a tiny car. Heather Ninder, boots on the ground. Heather Ninder took a video of the quaintest little CTT car. Another funny comment I can't find now, but Pete said it was very nice of you to fit us in before you get busy at Christmas as well. And I think that's because he thinks maybe the three of us with our beards are Santa's helpers. So see you at the North Pole. At Christmas.
Available for rent. Just provide the Santa suit. I'm happy to show up. Yeah.
There's a fantastic offer. Thank you very much for that. Another round of applause for you. Have a great day, and bye for now. And we'll see you again soon.
Take care.
Bye for now. Bye for now. Superb. And that little car that I promised, we'll see you tomorrow. We've got to go now. We're way over time, but it's been so worthwhile and fantastic to be here with Marcus and Bill this morning. Here you go.
This is the smallest car, I think, that I have actually ever seen. CTT means post office. There's my car. Here's this car. I thought mine was small.
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.